So, it finally happened. After a long, contemplative journey of self-reflection and deep thought, I, a massive jrpg fan, has done the impossible, and I finally played my second Dragon Quest game. And now I stand before all of you, not only a changed man, but one with a review for Dragon Quest III HD Remake. In all seriousness though, Dragon Quest was always something I had meant to tackle on the channel at one point. I'd even made a review of 11 to test the waters and see if my fanbase wanted to see it. And looking at it now, it's kind of hilarious to remember that at one point it was my worst performing video of all time. See, for a little bit of Crimson Rosso lore, back when I had made the Dragon Quest XI review, all of my other videos had cracked around, I'd say, 100 to 200 views. This one didn't even make it to 60. However, that was also, unfortunately, when I was in a bad headspace and felt that if anything didn't meet my expectation for views, it wasn't worth my time. Plus, I was already hyper-focusing on the Trail series at that point, so it ended up taking most of my gaming time. Thankfully, I'm in a better headspace now, and now make content just for the love of the game. So being in this better headspace, I decided to start looking around for a Dragon Quest to play. My first pick was going to be 9, I'm even doing a playthrough of it right now, but I recently got some Target gift cards and decided to buy Dragon Quest III HD and make that my next game instead. Now, I've never played the original Dragon Quest III, so I'm not going into this title with any nostalgia for the original, or knowing if they changed or fixed anything from it. This review is from the perspective of a new fan of the series who's trying this game out and has never played any others before outside of the most well-known one. And now that I've beaten it, did I love it? Did I hate it? Well, it's time to find out. Here's my review of Dragon Quest III Remake. To kick things off, as I usually do, I'm going to talk about what I liked about the game before getting into my complaints. First and foremost, let's talk about the graphics, because this game looks downright amazing. It's no secret I'm a gigantic fan of HD 2D pixel art in games, and hearing 3 was going in that direction had me super excited to see how it looked. And at first, when I saw the gameplay footage, I wasn't super certain about aspects of it, like the camera being as pulled back as it was. But after getting my hands on it, my worries were proven completely unnecessary. It has a similar aesthetic to something like the pixel remasters of Final Fantasy, where they take the original and remake everything from the ground up into a modernized version of the original, and it works immensely well. The overworld and the mini dungeons and towns you visit on your journey look absolutely stunning and filled to the brim with a ton of detail. Character sprites look unbelievably good, especially the ones in battle. My favorite designs obviously being the ones based off the different job classes like the hero or the all-new monster wrangler. If I'm being honest though, I think the most impressive part of the graphic design was the monsters themselves. While all the sprites look downright incredible, the absolute best part was the extra effort put into the little animations they had, like trolls putting more energy into swings to do more damage, or dragons breathing in before launching out a big roar. You can tell the devs were really having fun programming them, and it makes me curious to see how the 1 and 2 remakes will be handled in terms of animation quality. And since I brought up the topic of battles, how about we get into the gameplay next? So unlike something like Final Fantasy, where one of its main claims to fame was how often it tried to evolve its combat system, or take it in a new direction with each mainline installment, Dragon Quest seems to just stick with the same type of turn-based combat over and over again, and add in a couple mechanics to make the games feel different. 11 had stuff like the pep-up system and the skill trees. From what I played of 9, it has the coup de grace system, alongside the return of jobs, which is pretty neat. But for Dragon Quest III, it had the series' first ever implementation of job systems. Naturally, when I heard that this game had a job system, I was excited. Job systems are my favorite mechanic of any RPG after all, and whenever a game has one, you know I gotta play it as soon as possible. After playing through the game, I gotta say this gotta be one of the more unique job systems I've ever touched. Unlike other job systems, where you simply just pick a job and your stats get a slight increase or decrease, or maybe swapping up a weapon or two, swapping up a job in Dragon Quest III knocks your level back down to 1. Now, when I say that out loud and you hear it, you think to yourself, wait, why would I want to do that? That's insane to just give up all of the levels for a new job. But the subtle genius of how it's executed is where it shines. While yes, it does take you down to level 1, its most unique mechanic is that instead of completely resetting your character, it instead cuts the base stats you had at that point in half, and you start at level 1 with those stats, alongside all the skills you learned from your original job. So while it seems like you are getting a bit of a downgrade by starting at level 1 again, it's more like you're starting at level 10 with experience gaining points of something from level 1. As a result, it creates this very interesting gameplay loop, where every time you reach a level 20 or higher and learn enough of the skills, You can go back and start a new job while killing metal slabs or various monsters to get all your experience back. This also leads to you mixing and matching jobs to create your preferred character. You want a warrior with high critical hit rates from martial artists? You can do that. Do you want to mix mage and healer together? Well, yes you can. Want to make your monster wrangler a sage? Well, after a few steps you can do that as well. The only thing limiting you is the surprisingly pretty sparse selection of jobs, but it more than makes up for it in being genuinely unique. In addition to this, there's also a couple other aspects of gameplay that I think are pretty cool. One was how magic targeting work. So in comparison to other RPGs, where almost all attack-based spells have the option to target everyone, most spells in the game can only target a specific group of people you're fighting, with the multi-hit spells being saved for your higher tier magic, with the exceptions being the spells Bang or Boom. It can get kind of irritating at points to deal with, but for the most part I think it's fine. Also, can I talk about how much I just love how Dragon Quest names their spells? Instead of something like Godflare or Firega X, you get names like Sizzle, Flick, Krek. Naming them this way just honestly adds another layer of charm to the whole thing, and lets the spells be a lot more memorable as a result. Okay, continuing on, I like the targeting system. It's got some flaws, I'll bring them up later, but I really do like how it adds some strategy into it so you use spells more effectively. Something I feel like a lot of JRPGs nowadays don't really try to take advantage of. Also, I like the little detail of the closer an enemy is to death, the text will change color. White for perfectly fine, yellow for doing alright, and orange for you're about to fucking die. Get the fuck out of there. It's charming, what else can I say? And well, that's really all I had to say about gameplay. So now it's time to move on to the story and its characters. They're fine, I guess. Again, this is a remake of an NES era RPG, so if you can probably tell, storytelling was not exactly the main focus. Its main focus was being a video game, and it knocked that out of the park. But at the same time, I don't want to just sit here and say there was no story to talk about. Well, yes, you can pretty much boil it down to gather a group together to defeat the big bad guy. There were some aspects of the narrative that I rather liked. The first one being the flashbacks of your father who left when you were young to go fight the Demon Lord himself. I like that there's an aspect that drives the protagonist. Some of the best moments in the story are when people are remembering just how cool his dad was, how much of a badass he is. It made it even more emotional where in one of the final scenes, he dies in your main character's arms, and he just laments about how he didn't get to see his ground grow up to be the man he always assumed he'd be, not knowing that you were the one holding him because he had went blind from the battle. It's a genuinely touching moment in a relatively story and character dry game. And well, that's really all I have to say about it. It's just heartwarming. Characters don't talk, it's a very silent party, similar to something like Final Fantasy III, and the story is very straightforward with one or two minor twists and emotional moments. So let me get on to something else, and that is just how god tier this music was. This soundtrack was absolutely fantastic. It was composed by Koichi Sugiyama, someone who has a lot of work composing Dragon Quest tracks. He's also composed for Dragon Quest XI, and that game soundtrack was pretty solid overall. And 3's was just downright great. My personal favorite track is probably the battle theme. I love the kind of energy it pushes as you're getting into a perilous battle that could be life or death. It went hard as fuck, and I'm very glad it did. And well, that's really all I had to say about this game's pros. So it's time for me to get into the cons. So when it comes to the cons of this title, I really don't have a lot of massive complaints with Dragon Quest III. It's very simple at its core, but it nails everything it wants to do so damn well that it's really hard to complain about any bit of simplicity because everything is so satisfyingly well done. The most I have is a couple of nitpicks, so let's go over those. The game looks phenomenal, so no need to complain about graphics. So how about we get into my minor bits about gameplay? Honestly, it's done so well that I have barely any complaints whatsoever, other than the fact of how this game handles aiming your attacks at certain monsters. For the most part, you do get to choose, but there are certain times in the game where if you're trying to aim to attack an enemy, you can only aim for a certain group of them or one in a group. It's at its worst when you have a group of enemies on the left side of the screen, one monster in the middle, and then another group of the same enemies on the other side. Just kind of makes fights more of a pain in the ass to deal with than they need to be. Not a massive deal breaker, but it did get annoying the further in you were going to go. Another issue I had with the game was some of the boss fights. Like 95% of them were great, but there's really only two I thought were bad. The first being this wispy flame thing, I can't even remember the name of it. It just dragged on and on because they could continuously summon new allies to help. Something that I don't normally hate when it's the normal enemies, but with the boss fight, it just caused it to drag on so long that I actively wish they removed it from the game. And the other was the final battle against the Hydra, where the only real difficulty comes from the fact that he can just continuously layer status effects on you. Other than that, every other boss fight is fantastic. God, this is going to be a really fucking short con section, because I just have so little to say in terms of negative. I guess I could also add that if you don't like grinding in RPGs, then I'd say stay away from this game because it very much encourages that at points. Even if there are ways around it, to make it not much of a problem. I also guess the story could have had more depth, but this was a game made when stories weren't really a big deal in games. Oh yeah, I guess I could kind of add on that the post-game was a little underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, I don't have as many issues with it as I did with 11 post-game. I think it's interesting that this is going to tie into the 1 and 2 remakes. In reality, I think my issues just kind of came with the burnout I was feeling by playing up to 30 hours of the main game and then just playing more of it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have a whole lot to complain about. It's just a really well-made remake, so let's go over to my final thoughts now. Dude, I could barely scrunch up anything for the cons, and I think that should say a lot of how high quality this remake was. Man, oh man, I really should have gotten into the Dragon Quest franchise sooner, because if they're all this entertaining, I'm gonna have a fucking blast with the rest of them. I think that's why my final rating for this game is overall a 9.5 out of 10. It's an absolute gem of a title, and I highly recommend that everybody go play it. And that is the end of the video. Much shorter than expected, but when you can't really find anything to complain about, it's better to just nip it in the bud. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like what you saw here and want to check out more RPG stuff on my channel, do me a favor and like and sub down below. We're trying to hit 1K this year, and I think we can do it. Leave a comment to help me out in the algorithm, hit the bell for some notifications. I'll see you next time for more RPG content.